Christian Gamers Union or Christ Grace Unlimited. My name is Trust in Christ, and today is a good day. Today is a great day as usual. Any day is a great day because the Lord has made this day. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And today we're going to have Bible study, pretty much picking up after Psalms chapter 7 and heading into Psalms chapter 8. And one thing that we see in David and about David is that he is definitely a man after God's own heart. And many people, just like his son, just like many people that are noble, you don't find many people that want to do for the Lord in their life. And David, his desire was to build God a kingdom for him on earth while he was there. One second. And that's what you see. Many people in life, they want to build mansions and house to build a name for themselves. They want much riches, to pass down to their children. But David, he desired to build a house to worship God, for all Israel to come together to worship God. And as we see, even though his heart's desire was to do this towards the Lord, God said no. But God rewarded him, saying, upon his bloodline he will establish his throne, and that a seed will come unto him through his bloodline, that his reign will never end. And we know what seed that is. That seed is Jesus Christ. He's the son of David, which means that he's from the bloodline of David, because in biblical times you didn't have grandfather or great-great-grandfather, but you were the son of David, or the son of your fathers, that bloodline. So David had the opportunity and the privilege and the honor to have Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world, to be born through his bloodline because of his heart. Because he desired to serve God. He made mistakes like many other people do in their lives when they want to serve God. But at the end of the day, David desired not riches and money, but to honor God that gave him the things that he gave. And you also see the same trend happening through his son Solomon. Lord, give me the judgment to judge thy people. And guess what Solomon's, reward was? I'm going to make you the wisest man in the earth. And not only that, Solomon, I'm going to give you all your heart's desire, all the riches. You didn't ask for it, but I'm going to give you these things because you didn't ask for long life or riches, but you asked for sound judgment. And that's something that we have to look at. We have to look at how David was honored, by God, to be able to have the lineage of Christ to come through him. And even though he didn't get his heart's desires, because we all don't have the ability or aren't given the opportunity to fulfill our dreams and our heart's desire. And that's a big reason why in Christianity we ought not to teach, dream chasing. We ought to teach to chase the Lord, chase his ways, follow him, see what his will is. Too often we try to seek what is my dream, instead of asking God, what do you want me to do, Lord? It's like JFK said, ask not what you can do for your country. What your country can do for you, but ask, what can you do for your country? And we have to have that same mentality. Not, God, do this for me, do that for me. More so, Lord, what is your will for me to do, to honor you in my life? If you do that, God will reward you in this life and the next for your sacrifice, for your labor. Just like Isaiah, when you open up the book of Isaiah and you read the beginning of the chapter, who will go for us? Isaiah said, send me, O Lord. I'll go. And guess what? God used him big time in his life for his will, and he did many great things. That's the heart we have to have, the heart of David. We have to have the heart of Elijah, where our dreams, our goals is, what can I do for God? God don't need me, but I am honored to do his work. I am honored to stand on his behalf as an ambassador of Christ. I am honored to do his will, even if it doesn't cause me to be famous in this life or have riches or money. I am honored, and I know the greatest honor of all is not being known in the world, but the greatest honor of them all is, am I doing your will, God? Or hearing God saying, well done, my good and faithful servant. So we're going to get started in the book of 2 Samuel chapter 8, where we're covering the victories of David when he became king, some of the victories as well. We're going to get into the next chapter real quick, where we deal with Jonathan's son and how David honored the house of Jonathan, his friend, after he died. 2 Samuel chapter 8, verse 1. And after this, it came to pass that David smote the Philistines and subdued them. And David took Mephibosheth out of the hands of the Philistines. And he smote Moab and measured them with a line, casting them down to the ground. Even the 2 lines measured he put to death, and with 1 full line to keep a line. And so the Moabites became David's servants. And remember, the Moabites are Lot's descendants, so they're relatives of Israel. Those are Lot's bloodline. Servants, and brought gifts. And David smote also Hadadezer, the son of Roab, king of Zeboah. And he also went to recover his border at the river Euphrates. So David took a lot of the aligned territories that belonged to Israel. Now remember, because Israel was in rebellion, a lot of the territories that was, belonged to them by right, God gave it over to the other Philistines, the Amorites, the Amalekites, the Jebusites, the Perizzites, even other nations, because they did not obey God by casting out the idols, not allowing idolatry to go in their land, not practicing the custom. And Israel took on the customs, made the people pay tribute. So God cast them out, did not allow them to fully encompass the territory that was allotted to Israel. But guess what? David, he served God with his whole heart. So as you see in Israel's history, when they fully obeyed God, God allowed them to conquer their enemies without any, dispute, and very swiftly. And you see that with David. Because David was with the Lord and he was honoring God, God allowed him to have victory with quite ease, because he is God. I'm talking about God. To get the land that was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Verse 4. And David took from him 1,000 chariots, and 700 horsemen, and 20,000 footmen. And David hoved all the chariot horses, but reserved of them 100 chariots. And when the Syrians of Damascus came to secure Hadadezer, the king of Zeboah, David slew of the Syrians 22,000 men. Then David put garrisons in Syria of Damascus, and the Syrians became the servants to David and brought gifts. And the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went. And David took the shields of gold that were on the servants of Hadadezer and brought them to Jerusalem. Now remember, who was the one that gave David all these victories? It was God. Remember, key verse number 6. And the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went. And why was that? Because he was obeying God. If he wasn't obeying God, he would have been just like Saul. Remember, because Saul feared the people and did not fear God, God tore the kingdom away from Saul and gave it to David. So Saul was overcome by his enemies, But David, he conquered all of his enemies throughout his entire life. Verse 7. And David took the shields of gold that were on the servants of Hadadezer and brought them to Jerusalem. And from Betah and from Boratai, cities of Hadadezer, King David took exceedingly much brass. When Toi, king of Hamath, heard that David had smitten all the hosts of Hadadezer, then Toi sent Joram, his son, unto King David to salute him and to bless him, because he had fought against Hadadezer and had smitten him. For Hadadezer had wars with Toi, and Joram brought with him vessels of silver and vessels of gold and vessels of brass, which also King David did dedicate unto the Lord, with the silver and gold that he had dedicated of all nations which he subdued. So that's another thing. What did David do with his blessings? He dedicated to the Lord. Do a lot of us do that? We spend our money from work, our success in our careers, on things we want, pleasures, worldly items. But do we honor God with our increase? Not many of us do it. And it wasn't about the money. It was about appreciating God. He didn't say, well, because I got this, let me spend it on all these hoochie moms. No, he didn't do that. No, I'm dedicating my spoil, my victories, my honor to God, because he's the one that has preserved me everywhere that I went. Even this great enemy here. Verse 12. All right. Of Syria and Moab, and of the children of Ammon, and of the Philistines and Amalek, and the spoils of Hadadezer, the son of Roab, king of Zeboah. And David got him a name when he returned from smitten the Syrians in the valley of Salt, being 18,000 men. Man, he killed a lot of men. And when he put garrisons in Edom, throughout all Edom put he garrisons. And all they of Edom became David's servants. And the Lord preserved David. All right, whoever's doing that, I'm going to have to mute you. 1 second. All right. Whithersoever he went. 1 second.
Voltage.
All right. That's okay. All right, anyway. And David reigned over all Israel, and David executed judgment and justice unto all his servants. And Joab the son of Zeruiah was over the host, and Jehoshaphat the son of Ahilud was recorder. And Zadok the son of Atub and Elimelech the son of Abiathar were the priests. So those are the sons of Aaron. And of Sariah was the scribe. And Benjamin the son of Jonathan was over both the Cherethites, not Benjamin, Benaiah, and of the Pelethites. And David's sons were chief rulers. So you see all the victories of David. When he became king, he conquered and pretty much took back pretty much a lot of the land, not all of it, that belonged to Israel because of God. Now, we see that David, as you see with the spoil that he gained, many kings and rulers, they spend all their money on themselves. They build statues and ornaments to, for them to be remembered. But David sought, God. And David, you see his heart towards his enemy, not his true enemy, but his father's enemy, Jonathan, his friend that helped preserve them. You will see what he did with his descendants. Because most kings, when, a king's, a lineage is still in place, typically their lineage is attacked and wiped out. But David didn't seek to do such a thing. And we're going to see how David moved in chapter 9 real quick. Verse 1. And David said, is there yet any that is left of the house of Saul, that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake. And typically in nations and rulership, and I've been studying, these past few weeks, a lot of Roman history with Cleopatra of Egypt, Anthony, Julius Caesar. And typically what you see when a house falls, the children are killed off because they're a threat, to conspire to retake the throne. And typically that's what happens, but David didn't do such a thing as we see in our near past. David didn't seek to wipe out the lineage of Saul, but he sought to honor Jonathan's house. All right, which is different because he's a man after God's heart. They made a covenant with one another. They loved each other. Jonathan protected him, and yes, he died, but David didn't hold his father's sins against him. Verse number 2. And there was of the house of Saul a servant, whose name is Ziba. And when he had called him unto David, the king said unto him, Art thou Ziba? And he said, Thy servant is he. And the king said, Is there not any of the house of Saul, that I may show the kindness of God unto him? And Ziba said unto the king, Jonathan hath yet a son, which is lame on his feet. So yes, he got a son who's lame on his feet. Remember, he was dropped, of his early age and was never able to walk properly since then. When you read later on in the chapter, when the Game of Thrones between David and Saul's house began, pretty much a lot of his brethren died, but the son of Jonathan survived. Verse 4. And the king said unto him, Where is he? And Ziba said unto the king, Behold, he is in the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, in Zobadar. Then King David sent and fetched him out of the house of Machir, the son of Amiel, from Zobadar. Now when Mephibosheth, the son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, was come unto David, he fell on his face and did reverence. And David said, Mephibosheth. And he answered, Behold, thy servant. And David said unto him, Fear not, for I will surely show thee kindness for Jonathan thy father's sake, and restore thee all the land of Saul thy father. And thou shalt eat bread at my table continually. And that's funny, because what is the natural instinct, as I said earlier, for a king to do? Everybody that is of my enemy's faction, they have to be wiped out, stumped out, to prevent a further rebellion when their children become of age, when they will begin to conspire. But David did not that thing. He restored all the land of Saul to this man with his lame feet, disabled. And not only that, just like David was at the table of Saul, just temporarily, pretty much he became Mephibosheth. This man with lame feet became, a person to sit at the throne of David at his table in great power. That's a great honor for his father's sake, because Jonathan protected him. Remember, he warned him when his father was in wrath. And he told him when his father, was not in wrath, Saul, because Saul sought his life. Verse 8. And he bowed himself and said, What is thy servant, that thou shouldest look upon such a dead dog as I am? Then the king called to Ziba, Saul's servant, and said unto him, I have given unto thy master's sons all that pertaineth to Saul, to all his house. Thou therefore and thy sons and thy servants shall till the land for him, and thou shalt bring in the fruits, that thy master's sons may have food to eat. But Mephibosheth, thy master's son, shall eat the bread always at my table. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. Then said Ziba unto the king, according to all that my lord hath commanded his servant, so shall thy servant do. As for Mephibosheth, said the king, he shall eat at my table as one of the king's sons. Remember, David was a son-in-law of Saul, and he had a seat at his table, so he was pretty much made like a son of David in a kind of a sense, but he was still over his father's and his grandfather's house. He became the ruler of Saul's, land and estate. All right, we're going to finish this off right now. And Mephibosheth had a young son whose name was Micah, or Mashah. And all that dwelt in the house of Ziba were servants unto Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth dwelt in Jerusalem, for he did eat continually at the king's table, and was lame in both of his feet. Amen. What an honorable thing. Many men would not do such a thing. They would keep the territory towards themselves like we have today. But David, a man after God's own heart, honored his friend Jonathan. Remember, did David seek the life of Saul or his sons? No. He wanted Israel restored. He didn't want Saul to die. He didn't want his friend Jonathan, his brother-in-law, to die. He didn't want, the other sons of Solomon that warred against them to die. So he honored them and showed mercy. Remember that verse. When your enemy hunger, give him eat. When he thirsts, give him drink. For in doing so, you heap coals of fire upon your enemy's head. So do good unto your enemies. I'm going to leave it at that. All right, so that'll be the end of Bible study. Are there any comments or anything before we close out?
I have a comment.
All right.
So, in the previous chapter, there was two people that was named. And it said one was a recorder and one was a scribe. Does this necessarily mean that they had the ability to write and such?
A scribe was on that read scrolls, because you got to remember, in the ancient past, your common man didn't know how to read like it is today. So a lot of people were illiterate, like they couldn't read. Some people did, but you had to be taught how to read. So a scribe was pretty much someone that would, when the mail comes in, like the scrolls or scribes come in, he would would take apart, the band and all that, open it up, and read the scribe to the people. So that's what a scribe was, someone that would read, a script or, a document today. It would be like, let's have a meeting today, everybody. The message from the king is here. Okay, what's his decree on his letter? There's a stamp upon the letter. Okay, the king said today everybody's getting, hot chocolate and ice cream today. Oh, that's what it says there? Yes. So that's what a scribe would be. Someone that would take, recorded writings and read it. So that's what a scribe was, so they could read. Because remember, in the ancient past, not everybody could read. That's just how it was. Today, your common man can read, because of the education systems that, are given to your common man. But in the past, mainly your nobles could read, or someone that was trained in reading and could read. And your scribes were people that, not your scribes. What was the other one? What was the other one?
Recorder.
Recorder was someone that would write down, like, the minutes or the notes of what a king would say, at a meeting. So it's kind of like if you're in a council meeting, I'm trying to remember what it's called, a secretary, not the secretary, but whatever position that is. If you're in any meeting like a council or organization board, you do have a recorder that does the minutes of the meetings. If you're a part of any organization where you have presidents, vice presidents, chairmen, secretaries, directors, You always have someone to record what goes on in meetings or decrees that are made or votes that are done, in a council. So that's what those positions were, in that time. Same thing in scripture. Your disciples and people, they recorded the works and acts of Jesus as, he walked on earth. Or on the behalf of Peter, you have Luke. Luke's gospel is, notated to be Peter's account. You know, or Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Those are those disciples' recordings of what happened during the life and ministry of Christ as he walked the earth. That's what you see right there. Did I answer your question? Anybody else? Did I answer your question?
Oh, yes. The reason why I was like just asking this is because hearing that I know a lot of non-believers um will criticize the I guess maybe the authenticity of the Bible or how much it can be trusted because they'll pretty much say that everything was just um done by oral traditions. Everything was just spoken.
Mm-mm.
But but you kind of have to question how did the people like of the Old Testament, how did they get these scriptures? How were they able to receive it? Because I think by my understanding, Moses was the one who wrote the first five books, and what we know of him, he was pretty much a prince in Egypt, or
Yeah.
so he was in a high position around people that could read, that could write. He had that ability to do so, and then these other kings and people would also have that ability. And
Right.
then you also get to the New Testament. Many people make the argument that like, how can we trust the disciples when you have common men that were just fishermen? Well, part of the people of their ministry, you had one of them that was a physician, a doctor who had to, be knowledgeable, and then another one was a tax collector. I don't know like how the job would work under the Roman authority, but I would assume he would have to be able to read and write and do numbers and all that in order to keep track of the people's taxes and whatnot. So, they had the ability, to write and read. God bless the people to be able to um, further the ministry. And even if there was some kind of case of where a writer had wrote something different than what say one of the more other disciples had spoken because maybe they couldn't read say they couldn't read or write. Well, in order to spread, they had to spread the gospel, whether it's by oral tradition or by writing. And if they had heard like something different, they can be like, oh, hang on, no, I did not say that, and that could have been corrected. So I just kind of just wanted to draw conclusions to that.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, that's true. You know, pretty much the only books that were recorded that were secondhand when you look at scripture was, pretty much the book of Genesis, which was given to, you know, Moses through God. Besides that, everything had a recorder, close to the events. So, it wasn't a second hand. It wasn't like with Christianity, it's not a book of like tales, like oral traditions that are passed down by word of mouth. No, they were all written down and passed down through its lineage through time, and they were rewritten, not re not rewritten in a way where you retell the story, but pretty much copied. That's what I mean. They were copied to preserve the text, and like you see with the Dead Sea Scrolls and other texts like that. Uh, so it's not like what's that tale? It's not like King. I'm trying to remember the name. Whatever, but it's not like Hercules or all that where it's passed down by word of mouth. No, it's recorded, in the original recording of these stories were copied and copied through its time when the writings became older. Same thing with your New Testament. The New Testament is copied and passed down, and it's the exact same as it was when the events actually happen. So
You know,
you don't have a second you don't have a second hand written book. You have a book that is recorded close to the source time, which makes the Bible very special. It's a book where it tells things that are unpleasant about many of the main, historical figures in the Bible. Like David records his bad deeds, everybody's bad deeds. And, it tells us of the redemption of Christ, even though he uses, imperfect people to do his will. So it's very interesting. And just know, even with Genesis, the accounts of Genesis, because a lot of people bring that up with your Jesus mysticists that say the Bible copies off the religions, other religions, or they make the claim or accusation that we stole the stories from the Egyptians and that they're the same. No, a lot of these stories, because they are similar, a lot of them don't take an account that we were all one nation at one point in time. That a lot of these stories, I'm not talking about the God stories, but like of the floods or the nations being scattered, by God. They were passed down by the sons of Noah because we all come from that lineage, as you see in Acts 17. We all come from one blood. We all are descendants of Adam. We all come from the lineage of, Noah as well. So did Noah not teach his son, what they went through? Yes, he did. It's just through his lineage and through his bloodline. They did not seek the Lord. They did not want to retain God. So God rose up Abraham to be his people in spite of the world rebelling against him. That's something that has to be known. So, the Bible not being the oldest religion compared to like Hinduism does not take the validity away from the Bible. Does not mean the Bible has copied off of the books of the dead or, books of spells or the story of Thor or Zeus, which those stories come from the recording, the perspective of the heathen that rejected God, but the stories that you see that comes from the Jews, from the ones that have the father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those are the recording of the stories that come from God and His people that serve them. So just because it's older, talking about Genesis account, does not mean no that is completely right. It's the whispers, as you see C.S. Lewis said, you know, the stories, the tales of the pagans, they come from the whispers of demons, or like God said in First Corinthians, the gods that the Gentiles sacrifice to are demons and devils, and that's something that is missing very much when Christians talk amongst a lot of the youth today, because a lot of these ancient religions, they're rising up, and because a lot of us are uneducated, we don't look at the other stories, and we don't know our Bible, and we don't compare these religions to God, and we just listen to a person and just take blanket statements. We don't know why Jesus is the only way, and what is the difference between the religion, and why Christ is separated from them, and why Christ is the truth, the only truth in the life. You see those answers, and you see that God preserved His word, and that Mystery Babylon is still alive and well through their stories, their religions, and their goal to rise up and establish their own dynasty, their own kingdom, to redo the work of Nimrod, to make their own way to heaven, or to find the fountain of youth. But with us, we have our way to Christ, we have our way to God, we have our way to eternity through His Son, Jesus Christ. Anybody else before we close? All right, James, close us out.
The CGU and all biblical works are brought to you in part by
The
The
Bible.
Bible.
All right, God bless. Until next time. Peace.